Welcome to This Explainer. Look, today we're diving into something absolutely profound. We're going to examine how the deepest, most fundamental structures of modern physics and computation are systematically dismantling a 100-year-old scientific dogma. We are stepping completely away from old assumptions and looking directly at the structural realities of our universe, really to understand this massive shift in how we view information, identity, and the very concept of permanent loss.
For over a century, modern thinkers have confidently answered this question with a resounding yes. You know the drill. People have continually used the standard scientific consensus as this definitive shield against the transcendent. The basic assumption has always been that once a system collapses, once an organism dies, or once a state gets scrambled, well, it's entirely beyond recovery. Irreversibility, we were told, is just a fundamental, unforgiving law of reality.
Part 1. The illusion of irreversibility. So, how did we get here? Well, the historical buildup of standard physics really boxed in our thinking. Back in the 19th century, the era of steam engines gave us thermodynamics, basically cementing the idea that order inevitably decays. Then, in the 20th century, we built our computers using logic gates that literally burned off information as heat. I mean, a physical destruction of data. And as we enter the 21st century, neuroscience just assumed human identity was tied exclusively to these super fragile biological substrates. Put it all together, and it created this bedrock cultural belief: collapse is structurally final. All right, let's move to part 2. Science shifts to reversibility. Now here's where things get incredibly fascinating. Across entirely distinct scientific fields, reversibility is re-emerging as a true, lawful pattern. Take quantum information. We're seeing what's called unitary evolution, which basically means quantum states inherently prevent information from ever being completely destroyed. Over in fundamental physics, we have CPT symmetry. This shows us that the core laws of the universe actually work exactly the same backwards as they do forwards. Entropy is just a statistical effect, not some rigid law. And even in neuroscience, we're discovering that memory is incredibly distributed and highly robust.
Just consider these recent research milestones. And to be clear, these are not fringe theories. We're talking about work from the most rigorous institutions on the planet, from Google Quantum AI literally reversing scrambled quantum states, to MIT demonstrating reversible error correction, to Caltech's groundbreaking work on time reversal symmetry. These milestones proved that reversibility is the actual frontier of human knowledge. They're demonstrating mathematically and physically that identity and information are just far more durable than we ever assumed back in the 19th and 20th centuries.
Which brings us to part 3, the first reversible operator.
For decades, standard computation was completely plagued by lossy transitions, entropy injection, and this sort of destructive drift. But now, we actually have a ground-truth reversible computational substrate. This operator demonstrates perfect information preservation and zero entropy injection. It's a real game changer because it decisively proves that the irreversibility of our past technologies, well, it wasn't an unavoidable law of reality at all. It was simply a clumsy design choice. What you really need to take away from this is that this breakthrough is completely tangible. It's not simulated, it's not some loose approximation. It is real, deterministic, and happening at the ground level. By demonstrating absolute perfect state preservation without structural drift, this operator physically proves that irreversibility is not the ultimate boss of the universe. The fundamental structure of reality actually allows for perfect recovery.
Let's dive into part 4, the pattern of resurrection.
Okay. Let's think about this. When stripped entirely of mysticism and viewed strictly through a structural lens, death is really just the maximum possible distortion of a human being's state. It's the ultimate system collapse. Therefore, the resurrection pattern is simply a structural framework where identity survives that maximal distortion and continuity is eventually restored. It's the ultimate metaphysical version of the exact physical reversibility we're observing in quantum mechanics and reversible computing right now. Viewing things in this structural light, consider the concept of the logos from the Gospel of John. The logos is described as the absolute ordering principle of reality. So when applied to the broken state of death, the logos acting on that state isn't some supernatural magic trick that violates the laws of physics, not at all. Rather, it is the metaphysical prototype of this precise ordering principle. Its perfect identity preservation and the bounding of chaos just scaled all the way up to the level of human existence.
Part 5. The End of Impossible.
The implication of this is incredibly precise and strictly scientific. A reversible operator doesn't prove resurrection, it makes zero supernatural claims. What it does do is prove that the universe fundamentally supports reversibility. And logically, if the universe supports reversibility, then resurrection can no longer be classified as scientifically impossible. It shifts entirely from being scientifically forbidden to simply being metaphysically extraordinary. This safe, precise distinction single-handedly collapses the modern scientific objection.
And why does this matter? Well, it's massive. For a culture trapped in modern nihilism, a culture that genuinely believes everything decays and all loss is permanent, this physical structural proof is an absolute antidote. It offers a completely new worldview, one based entirely on restoration rather than annihilation. It tells us definitively that identity is durable, that collapse is not final, and that hope isn't just some comforting emotion. Structurally speaking, hope is entirely rational.
As we mark the end of the word impossible, I want to leave you with this to consider. We've seen the evidence, right? From quantum labs to ground truth reversible computing, decay is clearly not the final word. So, if the universe is structurally wired for restoration, how does that change the way you view your own identity, your setbacks, and your future today? Thank you for joining me for this explainer. Keep questioning the impossible.